Hey everyone, welcome back to the Dairy Raid. And with fall camp just around the corner, I think it's time that we take a look ahead to the 2024 season. And so, what I'm going to be doing with this preview series is to go away from the formula that a lot of the other people in the Badger content space is going, and look at the preview from a different point of view. I'm doing that one because, everyone else can do the traditional player by player depth chart, camp storylines type previews better than I can. They're more eloquent speakers, they're better writers, they can do all that kind of stuff. At the end of the day, I'm a football coach, and so I'm going to look ahead to this season as if I was a coach on the staff, and I'm looking forward to what we need to improve, what we need to change, and then how we can take advantage of those changes to improve the on-the-field product. So that's going to be the approach. And when we're looking at this kind of approach, I'm looking at identifying 3 key areas of improvement, and then how that can be used to utilize, or that can be utilized going forward. For me, that is fundamental improvements, improving execution, and then bringing it all together and finding a tactical advantage that you can use with that new found improvement. So that's what we're going to be looking forward to. And starting out today, we are going to be looking at the running backs. Running backs is an interesting position to look forward to this season because we are seeing a changing of the guard. Obviously, last 3 years we've had Braylon Allen as the number 1 back. Chez Mellusi has been there the entire time, but he hasn't been able to stay healthy. Now it's his turn to be the feature back, quote unquote, and we'll see how it goes when he takes the reins here. I think starting with this year, we're going to see a fundamental change in how the backfield is utilized, because that's the way modern football is going. The days of the feature back getting a lion's share of the reps is over. One, because it's strategically more advantageous, to use multiple backs to keep players healthy, to use different skill sets, and to optimize your offense. So while Chez is probably going to be the feature or the lead back, I don't think he's going to be a feature back. So looking at the running back room as a whole, as a coach, if I was the running back coach, if I was Devin Spalding and I was coming into fall camp with this group, where would I like to see improvement, and how could I utilize that improvement? If we're looking at it from a fundamentals point of view, last season, and maybe this was more because of the backs who were doing it, I was really disappointed in the pass blocking fundamentals, pass protection fundamentals of the running back room as a whole. I thought Chez was fine early on for a smaller back. He has good feet. He did a better job sitting lower in his protection. But what we saw a lot, especially with with Braylon, and we saw with Yakameli and with Acre when they kind of had to take over, was very top-heavy pass protection technique. A lot of lunging, a lot of hands over hip or over feet beyond the reach of our stance. And that is an area that they need to improve from a fundamentals point of view. Sitting lower, punching out, okay, keeping their weight over their hips instead of over extending beyond their feet. That way you can absorb contact and deflect contact, which is what this group needs to do better if we're going to utilize the running back as a pass protector. And that's important, obviously, because as we saw, we couldn't really utilize the running backs to the full extent in the offense as pass catchers, which is going to lead into the next kind of area I want to talk about with execution. Is I'd like to see our running backs execute what I like to call the square, scrape, and burst technique when it comes to getting the ball in open space. Because it's not all about just trying to run around the corner and getting outside of everybody. You want to get that ball in space. You want to be able to accelerate towards the outside shoulder of that defender. You want to be able to square him up, put your foot in the ground, scrape inside of him, and then burst to the second level. I think what we saw a lot of last year when it comes to this execution is a lot of running of the feet when we get to that scrape and square position, where we would get there, we plant the outside foot, and then the inside foot would come, and there would be a little bit of a stutter sitting there. We saw this a lot with Katie Akamelli and Jackson Aker. Obviously, they were the 3 and 4 back in the system last year. Maybe we was expecting a little bit too much for them to execute at a higher level. We saw it with Braylon, came with injuries. With Chez, we saw the tendency more to bounce it outside. So I'd really like to see him, especially because we know the speed that he's got, to really drive to the outside, plant that outside foot, and then cut and get vertical more often. More lateral movement in the outside zone game, more lateral movement in the inside game, and then be able to bounce it back. I think that's going to add a different dynamic to the offense, especially when we start getting our backs out, and especially now that we have had such an emphasis in the short passing game up until now. And with better movement outside of the box, we're going to get into how we can use that tactically, is utilizing the running backs better in the passing game. Last year, our route tree with the running backs was very limited. And we saw flats, we saw bubbles, and that was pretty much it. We saw screens early on with Chez. That kind of went away, partially because of the offensive line, and we'll talk about that when we get into their preview later. Saw an angle route here and there, but what I would really like to see them is take advantage of the running backs going all directions in the passing game. So getting out to that key point where almost all of our upfield routes for running back hit that space just beyond the tackle, be able to square up the line of scrimmage, and then be able to go out, go up the seam, or cut back in over the middle on an angle route from that same position. So I want to see that same look that we gave a lot last year, but be able to take advantage of that of different angles. I think having backs like Chez and Toby Walker, who are both comfortable in the passing game. Toby Walker's coming from experience in the air raid system, the air raid system as a running back. He could be better utilized in that, and adding the running back more effectively into the passing game is going to help not only the intermediate but the long passing game, because it is going to help us get a better three-layered effect when it comes to setting up our routes. All right, so looking back on this again, from a fundamental standpoint, I want to see better fundamentals when it comes to the pass protection. From an execution standpoint, I want to see us be able to square up better and to scrape and to accelerate with a one-cut kind of movement in the open field especially, and coming off of the outside zone. And tactically, I want to see more diversity in the passing game from the running back group. I want to see them better utilized to help create that three-layered effect in the passing game. With all that combined, with the room that we have, I think it's going to be a great year for the running backs. because to me it's going to hopefully be truly a running back room and not a running back man, where the entire offense in the past seems to run through that one guy. And if that one guy is not at 100%, the running backs are not at 100% because we don't have anything built in for the rest of the room. I think Phil Longo's offense works best when he has multiple backs, that he can share the load, diversify the load, and build more of a by committee type room. So we're going to see how that looks going forward, and it's going to be an interesting year. And we haven't even talked about the freshmen yet, and we'll get into that later. I want to hear about actually freshmen showing up and doing something and finding their way on the field before I start saying I think the freshmen are going to make an impact. But what we talked about here today is for everybody, not just the returning guys, but the freshmen. The room as a whole we're previewing today. All right? So that's it for today on the running backs. Next time when we come back out, we're going to talk about the tight ends. So until then, thank you for watching, and we will see you next time.